So we're going to go back to the training
I
materials.
think I'm a little confused about what this sources of variation, what these graphs are representing,
Yep.
because I'm hitting the up and down arrow keys, kind of flipping through them, and I'm not really sure.
First off, it shouldn't be doing anything.
What's that?
Shouldn't be doing anything if you did the
Okay,
way I did it.
well,
If you just
that's
did the
that.
loadings button and you do this, that's a different story.
Okay, well, let me try that, because that may.
Well, we're going to get back to. Well, let me explain what we did, and maybe that will clarify everything for you. Sound
Yeah,
fair?
because I was like, all right, what the heck am I looking at here?
Nah, this is only the second time I've taught this class. I'm only kidding. No, I did that on purpose. I just kind of gave it a concept, and we'll come here. So we'll show you what we just did for the batch level. You just did it, so we'll give it a quick intro. The data organization, that is nothing you can do. I just want to explain it to you. Then that will explain what you're looking at. Okay, and we'll tell you why we do it. We're done from there. So we just did a batch evolution. So what we're going to do is going to take each of these lines here from the score space, and we're going to convert them into dots, right? So we can see how each batch evolves and how they compare to each other. So how did this batch evolve compared to the other batches? And then overall, that's where the batch level model comes in. We can see how each batch overall compared to each other. So every dot is now a single batch. So all the each row now, because one batch is an observation, right? That's an observation for PCA space. Each row has different types of data in it. Has your process data, has your limbs data, has your all this other information. It all be shoved into a single dot. And so the data organization, batch level models can contain a single data set or a combination. Okay, so we can have your original process data, any raw materials, any outputs, any in-process data, spectroscopy, et cetera, et cetera. Raw material and finished quality attributes would be one row per batch. As we discussed, that'd be like your batch conditions. The batch ID must be the same. So you guys would be sensitive to a lot of clients when you use Pi or other systems or Discoverint or another quality metric, they put an underscore or they put in a dollar sign or something into the identifier for some silly reason. So you may have to create lots of little baby scripts to kill all those off. Simca is not the brightest program in the world for that. So it is going to be sensitive to those sorts of things. So some customers, they have the whole batch ID is all the different sub batches that made the final batch. So the last one's like 270 characters wide. The only, but the first 20 characters are what the original batch ID was. So all we care about is the first 20 characters. So sometimes you just cut off the first 20 characters and say, that's my batch ID. Depends on how the data is structured as you go. And so the process must be reorganized, and that's done automatically within Simca. So in the organization, I know you guys are all smart. This is a pretty cool slide, okay? Because this is the magic behind the scenes. So if you want to do this on your own, feel free. You can slide this data out. You can use our tools and Studio and all that fun stuff. Right? We can't stop you. So you can recreate this, but I think it's much easier if you just buy the package from us, pay the money, than to try to recreate this stuff yourself and then maintain it and manage it. Plus, you get all the fun support from Art. So here we have all our batch data here. So I have my individual variables 1 through 5 here, right? So we break them out. Now, if I just slide, I take this last timestamp, last variable. So last variable, last
Yeah,
timestamp. I slide
yeah.
it
This
out
is
here.
exactly what Event Frames do, or very similar to what Event Frames does. Is it makes all the columns rows when we do like when we're in PySQL Commander and we do the transform of it. That's exactly what this does. It makes all the you have one column, it flips it into a row like that. At least I think that's what you're representing here.
I don't know for sure. I don't
Maybe
think
not.
so.
Just
So I'm taking that last variable, last time stamp, and I'm putting it way over here on the right, and I'm going backwards in time to the first timestamp for that last variable. And that next one slides in behind it. So I have the last timestamp for the fourth
right, it is
variable.
different.
I go all the way back up to the first, and then I have the last one for the third, second, and first. Okay. So that is how we unfold. That's what it's called, unfolding. So now a single row. So now every individual variable and each individual timestamp for each individual variable has an opportunity to contribute to the understanding of what's happening in your batch. So we're not limited to just looking at, oh, my pH is higher, my batch is better. Well, it's only pH at this timestamp that was higher, but the average, of course, was going to be higher, but only that one timestamp made a difference. So you can have some batches where the pH was significantly higher. One was at the end of the batch, one was at the beginning of the batch, but the average, right, or whatever you were normally reporting would never have caught that a particular timestamp or a part of that particular variable was important at a part of a particular time. So that's where you get that resolution. That's why you're seeing the sources of variation is, not only when was that variable was important, but when in the process that variable was important. And this is how we get that resolution.
Hang on one second. Hey, Katie, when Dan was showing you the stuff they were doing, did they talk at all about how they were doing batch analysis in Simca?
No, he didn't talk about it at all.
Because everything I've seen or heard them talk about, and I may be wrong, but I don't think they're doing it this way, their batch analysis. This will be interesting for us to kind of dig into.
Probably not.
So you're sounding
Yeah. scratchy.
You may have to go lay down after this.
Yeah.
She caught Daniel's crud from last week, sounds like. So
Well, that's been going around.
Yeah.
Yeah, the younger one had it. She just did a dance recital on Saturday. She came out and like, you look like you're about to die. She was like, yeah, but I finished. So then she basically slept all day yesterday. Woke up this morning and went to school. Looked totally normal again. So it's amazing. So whatever it is, it's probably not very long lived, I hope for you. So when we unfold it, again, that gives every timestamp for every variable. So pH at timestamp 5, pH at timestamp 1, pH at timestamp 11, all have an equal opportunity to be contributing to understanding what's changing my final titer, what's changing my final quality parameter. What's nice is we can then point, if I make this change to my input, what part of the process does it affect? So now I can see if I change these inputs, when does that effect actually roll into my process? So it's like if I adjust my input, the amount of bark, where does that actually affect my process? Is it the amount of water being needed to wash at the end? Is it whatever you're currently looking at for your variables? You'll be able to figure out when those particular parameters are being affected. And so what we end up doing is we just stack them together. So we have all the different batches are now all aligned, and then we can do our PCA, PLS, and all that fun stuff on them. Just leave everything by default. Don't even bother looking at it. And so now we have everything stretched out. So I have 7 variables. I have 83 timestamps. Now I have 581 variables now. So it's much wider data set. Rather than being a square, it's a long, thin row. So instead of being a piece of paper, you have a really long pencil. So you have 581 variables now. One variable represents the initial start condition. That's now going to be called Z. In this case, it's going to be the inoculum. And we're going to have our 4 results. I don't know why they have 4. We've reduced it to 3. We have our Q1, Q2, and our yield.
Awesome. This definitely helps
Amount.
understand all that. It confirms what I thought about the initial conditions. Awesome. That knocked it home. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. The slides were made by people who are way smarter than me. My job is just to try to transfer the knowledge. So glad it worked. Now, you don't have to have all these batch conditions at the start. You can import them at any time. So if you just import your process data, unfold it, take a look with your PCA space, go, yep, this makes sense. Let me go ahead and import the rest of the stuff. Feel free. You can bring it all in at the same time. It's all up to you. A lot of people just throw it all in the same Excel sheet, so it's 6 to 1, half dozen of the other. We've already talked about all this fun stuff. Yep. Oh, only thing here is the data. I've said this like 10 times, and I'll say it 10 times again. The batch ID's got to align with every single, again, because again, I've seen it Takeda. Every single time they move from one process app to another one, the default batch ID gets changed. No fault of their own, and it just really messes up. So when you're trying to aggregate all their data, we're inevitably doing left or right, depending upon where it's added, and counting the number of characters and pulling out just the batch ID that we need. So we have those equivalents in the generate variable tab. So here we have the objectives for the high levels to compare how each batch looks to each other. So good example is we have the upper right hand quadrant came from supplier 1, lower quadrant on the right is supplier 2, and then we have like supplier 3, so it's like right between, right along the 0 axis for the next 2 over there on the left hand side. So now I have 3 different suppliers, have 3 different spaces. So now you can go back in and try to figure out what's going on. You can help you with your batch qualifications and batch releases. So if I have this process running at plant A, I pick up the model, move it to plant B. You run, there's going to be offsets that have to be applied, but you run one batch, or we pull in one batch of data we compare, apply those offsets, and now you have a model for the other plant, as long as it's the same process. Now, with that said, at that point, you'd only pull in the process parameters, pH, temperature, things that are touching or sticking into the process. I wouldn't give a rat's banana about anything else. Only things that actually are measuring the material in the tank. That can get moved. Okay, and that's what you can then use to make sure that it's following the same trajectory. So not only did I put the same stuff into my tank, it's following the same evolution. So therefore, I'm not 100%. You're 95, right? Everything here is built to 95%. I'm 95% confident that that output is going to be the same as where it originally came from. Okay, so if I'm moving it from like Illinois to California, or Texas to Wyoming or whatever, it's the variables that are actually in the process are the ones that you would build a model on and show that you're following that same trajectory. Because I wouldn't care about the jacket temperatures, I wouldn't care about all that other stuff. Okay, those are superfluous to what we're actually measuring in the tank. All right, so that's just very important to keep that separated. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're only really paying attention to what's in the tank. So sometimes I'll build a model just on what's in the tank, and then I'll build a model with all the other support information. And you'd be pleasantly surprised. They very, very rarely overlap, because the support equipment is changing to keep the conditions. And so, sometimes outside equipment working harder, working less hard, sunny days, non-sunny days. Sometimes the support equipment isn't capable of reaching a certain point on a hot day. Like I have to keep this room air conditioned at 73 degrees while it's 100 degrees outside, 100% humidity. There's no way my 6,000 BTU air conditioner is going to keep a 2,000 square foot warehouse at the right temperature, right? So then you can start seeing failures and defects of the support equipment at that point in time. So, but hopefully that made sense. So right here, root cause analysis, scale comparisons. I'm trying to scale up or scale down again if you monitor the stuff in the tank rather than the trajectory will be the same. The pH at one scale should follow the same trajectory at a different scale. Temperature should follow the same pattern. Now, it may not be able to meet the same pattern, right? So that means you have to go back and do process development work. So at a smaller scale, I can put I can heat stuff up much quicker and cool stuff down much quicker at a smaller scale than a bigger scale. So they have to take into account scales. I literally worked for a company where the guy said, look, I can't cool 1 degree per second at 8,000 liters. That's impossible. You got to give me something to work with. He said, I thought you were a chemical engineer. Isn't that your job to figure that out? And he basically threw the piece of paper at me, walked out of the room. I'm like, wow, what a dick. So I went and I went to, because he gave it to me like in 250 mil scale. So I went to 2 liter and I figured out exactly what needed to happen. And I actually made a far superior product and handed it in. Then he decided to show up and go, oh, look at this process I gave these guys. It works great. And I'm going, okay, can you tell me what I'm doing then? And he started explaining everything. And I had just given a presentation right before he showed up to everybody going, this is what we're doing. And then he shows up and says the complete opposite. I'm like, okay, thank you. And he walked out the door like, okay, we knew he was full of shit. Well, yeah, well there you go. I proved it, because don't mess with art.
I still
Anyway,
hear the bitterness
scroll
in your
down
voice
here.
over that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can
His name was
I can
Marshall, by
still
the
hear
way.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, his name was Marshall. Yeah. Anyway, so here we can then look to see how the batches compare. If we're going to do a Y, like a yield, we can see which batches were better or worse. So that's going to be the OPLS. Here, we can start setting some limits. So if you start seeing the process zigzag or move around, etc., we've talked about that with the PCA. We've already talked about PLS, so we understand that already. The overall goal here is to see what's going on from batch to batch and see whether it needs to be investigated, understand what's going on between what parameters are adjusting my Y output. So again, that was quick. You're getting the condensed version. It's normally 2 whole days or 4 4-hour sessions just to cover what I just talked about with you guys in about an hour and change. Okay. So there's a lot of questions floating around in your head, and that's because you guys are smart and you know how to apply what you're doing. All right. So, don't be scared. Go through the exercise. I've said it 4 times. This is going to be a 5th. Everything you need to know how to do a batch analysis is in Baker's yeast. 90+% of everything you're going to need to know how to do is in Baker's yeast. That was 6 times. Okay. So, and if you get stuck or whatever, that's again why you have support. So you're going to pay PSM. So that's part of the support over the years. Okay. To get people like me, Brian, Luis, Amin, Michael, Ben, Chris, the 8 of us support the U.S. So one of the 8 of us will get a hold of you. If you're working in weird hours, it might be David in Singapore or Timo or Vaibhav, in India or in Germany. Okay, so we're all over the world. If you put a request in, somebody will get back to you right away. Okay, that's what you're paying for when you pay part of that premium price you pay when you pick up a Simca. Okay, it's the help and the support. All right. Anyway, so what we're doing now is we're seeing why VA here was different. VA was different because as I stretched out my variables, I could see that, which one was that? Was my molasses flow started off about normal, increased, and then went down. So if I had the best yield in the world, that'd be great. So if I come over here, I can now come to color by. I can color by a particular variable. So I can color here by a particular start condition. So let's go by, let's see, what do we have here?
So you read my mind. Good stuff.
Yep, I just got to get this, click on the right one. Oh, don't tell me Simca just crashed on me. Oh yeah, that's what happened. Joy. That's been happening more and more recently. I'm wondering if I got a crappy piece of memory on my computer. Can you still see my screen?
Yep.
Sometimes I lose the share when Simca crashes. Baker's yeast, yeah, let's recover it. All right, so here I have my BLM. There we go. Got my scores, got the loadings, come back to the scores. We can tile it, come over here. I should be able to color by inoculum. And there we go. So here's my inoculum. So a little bit higher here in the middle. It's a little bit lower over here. So I don't have an inoculum value for that particular one. But we can start to see the input doesn't seem to have an overall effect, right? They're kind of smattered all over the place. So that overall, that's a good thing. This is the loading for the first vector. So going from left to right, we can see that the temperatures are, and all these things are dropping. My flows are actually going down from left to right. I can see my ethanol here is going higher from left to right. Which one's green here? My airflow is significantly higher. Okay, but then the pH and my temperature are roughly right down the middle. So probably I don't really need to pay much attention to my temperature or my pressure because they're all roughly the same, at least going from left to right. And then from left to right, I can see I definitely have a reduced amount of these three, and I have an increased amount of these two. So that just understands it now. This probably was what Jim was doing. If I push the up arrow here, what separates the bottom from the top is that I have a really, really, really low temperature. So, you know, I'll have a higher temperature down here. I'll have a lower temperature up here. So remember, because I'm going from the bottom to the top, this is loading in. So that's what's making it go from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to have a higher temperature on the bottom and a lower temperature on the top. You have to learn to read things upside down or backwards. I can see here my molasses flow is decreasing, so I have a lower is high here, so it's getting higher as I go here. Sorry, yes. All right. So high temperature here, I have a low flow, higher flow. There's, I think I have 8 more dimensions, but we're not going to go through the rest of them. All right, so the last...
just to say, like, since we've removed outliers anyway, it's nice to know that, but you could just reduce some variation, but then if you get new ones in, then you can really see how it, like, what affected it, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to do that in a moment.
Okay, cool.
If you come to the predict tab, okay, so I have the M4 here. You can do the whole data set all over again. There should be a complement data set, which I'm curious why it's not giving me. There should be the complement work set. It's not giving it to me. So it would have been all the batches that we pulled out would be then predicted. Oh, I know what ended up happening. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I'm going to edit model 4. I'm going to click on OK. Don't auto fit. Yeah, I'll auto fit. And it should. Okay. So when we said no and no, it kept all the observations. We should have hit yes and yes to exclude, and we would have had excluded. So if I just delete model 4 for now, come back to home, click on new, come to the batch level, select my data. I want to pick all of these again. Click on next. I want to exclude, so I'm just doing the PCA again. Exclude those out. Click on next. Click on next, and then click on next. Right, and then click on finish. No. Observation. Do I want to exclude? Yes. Okay. Now I'm left with the 23 that we originally had up here in the batch evolution. Now if I highlight that, come back to predict, I should be able to predict the complement. So these are the ones that we removed. Those are all bad, as according to, and if I come over to the scores, I can see that indeed, there's your FB, there's your CA, and here's my normal batch. So some of these looked normal. If I look at my hotellings, I can see that they're messed up. And if I look at my DMOD X, I can tell that they're all out of whack because the DMOD X is all bad. So that's how you would then import or test that indeed my model is rejecting everything it should reject. These are all the ones that were rejected by the model originally. So some of these still look good in the score space, But as soon as I go over here to the D mod X, I can see that they're all not good. Cool beans. So the last step for batch would be creating an OPLS. So I guess we're going to right click, new as model 4. We're going to pick our data. We have all the data we need. Now we have to pick our variables. So I'm going to keep my inoculum. I'm going to add them as an X. Let's predict the amount. We're going to make that the Y. So I'm going to bring in the input. I'm going to have the output. I have all my process variables. And the batches have already been excluded. We don't need the ones that don't look like what we want them to look like. We're going to keep all the scaling identical. Now we have we're not going to do PCA anymore. We're going to do the OPLS. There should be at batch level. Yep. And we have finish. Now we have a new Y. Nope. Yes. It didn't fit anything, so we're going to fit the first two. And we're going to do the observed versus predicted. I probably made a boo-boo somewhere along the way. I'm going quick because we're running out of time. Again, this is more for exposure. So there's my prediction. I can then do my scores, and I can also do my
Yeah,
loading.
stop trying to follow. I was just figured I'd watch at this point. So.
Yep. So there's my prediction capability. Here is my loading. So if I want to have a higher value in my amount over here, so if I come in here color by, let's say the amount. So I'm going to color by a vector. I'm going to color by the finish conditions, results, and color by amount, and I apply it. I can say I have a higher amount on the right-hand side as I do on the left-hand side in general. So this is the reason why I have a higher output. This is the reason why these are higher, right? And that's because I had a higher airflow at the start and it dove off at the end. I have my differential level here started off lower and I added more as I went along. So I got maybe a better mix at the start. And I was able to then add more, right, so it's kind of like starting an emulsion, right? If I'm going to be beating egg yolks and add a little bit of butter, melted butter into it, I can't dump in all the butter at once. It's not going to work. But if I add a little bit at the start, I can add a whole bunch right here in the middle and it will end up just fine. I can add a whole bunch real little but I don't have to. So once I get it started, it will then take off, something like that. Same thing for your molasses flow. So these are the reasons why. So we can see again, temperature is not really changing. pH actually increased over time. So whatever would cause you to create your pH would make that higher. If I circle just these 4, okay, and I do a group to the average here in my marked items tab, you're going to get the exact same graph you just saw. Because that's the reason why it was on the right-hand side anyway. Was because of the exact same pattern. So the same pattern is going to flesh out because OPLS is going to tell you why I have a higher amount. And so if I look at the loadings or I look at the loadings here, it's the same graph. That is batch in a nutshell. It's pretty cool. There's other ways to pick. Yes. Bye, honey. Have a good one. Oh, she wants to come give me a hug.
Hi. Bye.
Bye, honey. Yep. She says, I'll see you at Thanksgiving because she was back from her break today. All right. So that's basically batch, very high level batch in a
So
nutshell.
in the baker's yeast, there's spectroscopy data as well in it?
No, there's no spectroscopy data in that.
All right.
What you would end up doing is creating a hierarchical model. So there is, I don't know if you have it. If not, I can probably go hunt it down. There is an exercise where you merge data sets together. Did I get you to patch 5 level? I had to send you
Yeah,
that too.
just send us those. It'd be interesting to kind of look at, because I think that's what we're going to end up doing for the Albemarle example. But I mean, I think Michael can help us like walk through that because he's already talked with a customer, and the customer's like, "Hey, I want Industrial Insight to work on this." So
Yeah.
so we'll probably do.
I'm going to print this to, was it Microsoft Adobe?
There you go.
There we go. This is color. There you go. Print.
Hey Ben, I
PDF.
think
I
this
want-
batch is super powerful.
Yep, I agree. I saw pieces of it, and so I figured it seemed useful.
Yeah,
Even if it's not just a batch, even if it's just like I think like a startup sequence or things that happen
Oh.
batch-like, like trying to model those similarly.
Well,
I think that could really
yeah. I
help
mean,
with variation.
well, think about this. So in paper machines, you can treat every reel as a batch, every grade as a batch, right? Things that like Philip is looking at with green, right? Every time they start up the power plant from a cold start or warm start, what does that look like? Basically, it's a batch. You are starting from some condition, and you have a time that you want to end in a different condition. You could treat that as a batch, essentially. And how does each time vary?
You definitely could. I would think we probably. Part of my brain says to do it in pieces, right? To do each part of the machine as a quote unquote
Right.
batch, but you could split it by reel
Yeah.
for sure, or grade at least. But try to do each piece of the machine. That way you get a better
Yeah, I think
model.
so.
You get a bunch of models rather than one. Because I think that's part of the problem when we just throw in a whole
Yeah.
thing. There's just way
Yeah, you
too
throw
much lag issues.
Yeah,
and
you throw
whatnot.
everything
Yeah.
but the kitchen sink into it. Yeah, it does.
Correct. I mean, you want to model something that's
It does
modelable.
make it, very muddy. Let's just put it that way. But I mean,
Is you can string models together to get an overall view of what you're doing. I would imagine would probably be the best.
but I
way to
mean,
do
literally every one of us has some kind of batch type data analysis we can do
Yes.
in the things we're working on right now.
that. Well, to me, batch and phase are kind of synonymous.
Yeah, they
Right.
basically are for most intents
Yeah.
and purposes. Yeah.
So if you have a machine with a certain phase, I mean, that's a bookmarkable point in time that you can do a batch model on
exactly.
and try to reduce variation during each of those
Yep.
phases.
Yeah.
Right. So let me do another one for you. This exercise is going to be really, really good for you. Assuming I can get this out of here. If I can get these two over here, multi-phase. Yes. This is the bitch and a half of an exercise. So it has spectroscopy. It's got different. It's kind of like a follow the ball, a 3-ball Monty. So it shows you how to manage data that doesn't necessarily have the right labels and everything to it. It's actually quite elegant. It's a bitch and a half of an exercise. You will get lost. And it's good. I'm trying to remember combined data. There we go. Oh, there we are. And we're going to send that in. I can't spell. Multi-phase. There we go. Change. Combined data sources. So that works out really, really well. So if I open up the sheet, you're bringing in some process data here. We have so for each of the batch IDs, we also then have spectroscopy data. There's the work set here, and there's also another work set over here. So you have work sets and prediction sets. So this is where, I want to predict new stuff coming in. Well, here's your new stuff right here. here's your old stuff. I'm going to build my modeling here, and I'm going to go ahead and predict new data coming in. So you have to combine all this fun stuff together. It is a pain in the ass of an it really, really is. What time is this? Oh, this is like next. No response required. Okay. Hold on. This starts 1 o'clock. Whose time? What day is it? Does he have his day wrong? He has his day wrong. That's tomorrow. Sorry about that. He was hitting me up as if I had to hit him today. And I'm like, no, I'm coming tomorrow. So that combined sources will help a lot. For spectroscopy, so that's already built into that other data set, so you can get a little bit of flavor for spectroscopy. They have deemed me a spectroscopy expert. In reality, I am. I don't like the title because I can always learn more. So how can I be an expert if I'm learning? But apparently just knowing a lot more than most people makes you an expert. So I'll take the title. I don't like it. And then also for particle size, I'm also an expert. That actually has been proven. I was able to, I qualified in California to be a particle sizing expert for inhalable, respirable powder. So like the PM 2.5 rules and all that fun stuff along with, so I know how all that stuff works for respirable powder. So if you need anything with bulk powder characterization, aerosolization, droplet characterization, all that fun stuff, I am actually, that's a known expert. Again, I'm still learning. But that one I'll actually take the title because I had to go through a lot of paperwork. But the other one, the Raman, FTIR, NAR, all that fun stuff for spectroscopy, I've just done it for 18 years. So that's how I know more than most. I work on it, at least a data set weekly from somebody. So I'm constantly being challenged. And as I keep telling people who challenge me, I'm like, look, if it was easy, you would have figured it out. So give me a little bit of time and let me see what I can do. And 2 or 3 days later, I come back with an answer like, how the hell did you figure that out? Like, I don't know. I just tried something and it worked, which is literally what it is. And then you got to go back and figure out, why did it work? That's the harder question to answer. All right, so we're getting to the end of this scheduled time block. I gave you a quick batch run through. I think from what I heard from the comments that you guys weren't thinking the same way that we think of batch, and I think that was not a bad thing. That was a good thing.
Well, I had a feeling that it was, and the thing that was interesting, like when Ben and I went through this with Tim, is he was just like, oh, it's so different, we're not doing that, and they're not even teaching it. After looking at it, I'm like, well, why not? I mean, why not? And there's so many places you could use it in a paper mill.
Oh yeah, we use it all the time for
Yep.
rolls. So you make a roll
Exactly.
as a batch. Batch digesters
Exactly.
are batch.
And
Clearly.
even a grade run's a batch. Which is a bunch of sub batch.
What run?
A grade run could be a batch. Well, it's actually more of a batch campaign.
okay.
Really, it's more like what it is. But I mean, the thing is there is that kind of data. They don't think of it that way. So guys, let me ask y'all this. Art, you said you could do another couple of hours. I wonder if it would be good. I'm just throwing this out here. If we did like we did last week and we just grabbed some batch data from, say, Albemarle, since we have mutual NDAs, and just grab like a month's worth of data, nothing real dense, like 5 or 10 minute data for like a month, and just walk through it. Just say, okay, what do we have here? What can we learn? Let's walk through it. Guys, thoughts? I mean, I'm just trying to think like or are we, or is it one of those situations where I think we've learned enough and we need to go practice and we just need to come up with an agreement between us and Sartorius to be able to, pick their brains for an hour or two at a time, with actual real world applications. Where do you guys see?
Normally what I end up doing is we'll come back like on the 3rd here, and we'll just pop 2 hours on here. You come back with questions, and in the interim, if you have a specific, so we come back, that's roughly
Yeah, I
2
won't
weeks.
be here. Like maybe do it the 10th. Because I won't be.
Sure.
I'm out of town. I'm teaching October 31st.
Out of town.
Oh, you're out on.
That week,
and
actually.
I have a training. I know I'm
Well,
training that day as well.
why don't we just
Yeah.
put the 3rd on there, and you guys can. You're out that week of the 10th, Katie. Okay, I knew it was.
Yeah,
I knew it was a
the whole
week in
week.
November. I just couldn't remember which one.
We can do Halloween.
Like I said, I'm out all that week, so if the
whole
rest of
week,
the group does, I don't have to be there. It actually might be good because then everybody's like, well, Jim will never shut up anyway. So
Normally we do. So I just wrapped up. If I come back here, I
Well,
have where was it? It was, I think it's tomorrow. I have like a Sanofi whatever makeup day.
so
here somewhere.
so
one of these
we're
days.
supposed to meet tomorrow afternoon. Why don't we just talk among ourselves
There it
and
is.
we'll get back with you and
sure.
try to put a
Yeah, sure.
put a block on because I think some kind of follow up will be good. I don't know exactly
Yeah.
what. But some kind of follow up, and I don't have to be there.
Yeah, normally I do like a 2-hour workshop or like a week or usually it's 2 weeks to 3 weeks out from the end of the class.
Yeah. We can kind of talk about what might fit. So let us talk among ourselves.
Yeah, perfect. That works.
So
And just take it from there. I'm fairly easy, in terms of flexibility. My calendars are constantly varying,
Right.
so I don't know what's going to be there tomorrow. But if you get a hold of me, I'll look at my calendar and lock you in.
yeah. Well, to
And we'll
coordinate
just
all of us is kind of the same way. Just this was far enough out where we could just say, all right, we're blocking this off and going to go do it. So it's
Yeah. So if we want to do 2 hours and you want to break it up into 2 different 2-hour blocks, it's more of trying to reinforce. So go out, find the new data, start to play with it, come to me with questions. You can also come to me individually with questions, email over, hey, I got a question. Do you have some time, today, tomorrow, or, I have these hours available, which, and I'll get back to you with, okay, let's meet this time, or I'll send back a meeting invite.
So here's a thought I have for everyone. I'm just throwing this out there. We're all working with customers, right? I think based on what we've seen over the course of these 4 weeks, there's probably something that might be spinning around in our head about what we're working on, where it's like, I don't know if I can learn anything. I don't know if the data is good enough, but I'd be willing to bet I could at least throw some data together and just practice and see what I can see. So let's talk about that tomorrow. Like maybe, each customer we're working with, we grab a data set, and some of them will be batch like a Bell. Maybe some of the batch stuff from Ogden would be good. Philip, maybe we talk with, Heather and team and say, hey, how could we get some data? Like what would be of interest? Katie, I think we've got examples, for Albemarle, and Ben, I don't know if Eastman has anything or if that's even on the table, but
There's not a lot I have access
yeah,
to
that's
that
what I
would
was
be
thinking.
really
So,
relevant to it.
so we could look at
unfortunately.
Albemarle for you too, since you're familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Philip, did
Yep.
you want to speak up? I saw you come off mute.
No, I was just gonna say, sounds like a good
Yeah.
idea.
Because I mean, one of the things in Art, the thing that Philip's working on is a power plant. They've converted from coal to gas. So like a couple of things that
Okay.
I know that they're going to be interested in is looking at all their startup events and like how things were progressing. we know they have the same challenge Michigan State does, where fuel is their, fuel usage is their biggest cost. So, how does
Right.
that, and I don't know if they've run enough yet where we can really see that, but it might be interesting to look at all their startup events. Cause like right now, like if you just went and pulled data right now, they're not running, right? And they haven't been running for a little bit. They're more of a peaker plant now, but, it'd be really interesting to see like when they have been running, have they been running the same? So it'd be kind of interesting to see. So we may ask them like, hey, what could we go look at? What are things that you're already seeing, even in your limited runtime? So that way, maybe we can bring something back, that's actually real world and say, hey, here's what I'm working on. We don't have to actually go look at the data, but I'm stuck here. What would you do next? So,
Sure.
but we'll talk about it internally. We got a meeting tomorrow afternoon, so this will give us something to chat about.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, you guys were a great class. I appreciated your time. Good questions. So
I think this is a super strong group of people. Very, very
Yeah, exactly.
curious. Love to problem solve, love to help people. And those are all kind of prerequisites. This is just a different set of tools, and I think practice will make all of us better, using it.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And I think our all of our practical knowledge will come into play pretty well. So, okay. Well, man, we appreciate
Awesome.
your time. I think you
Yeah.
did a really good job.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thank
Yep.
you.
Definitely. Thank you, Art. It's
Thanks.
great to connect all the dots here. So
Yeah,
appreciate
if you
it.
have questions, thoughts, concerns, pop them over. Um, and as you go along, if you struggle for something, don't sit there and bang your head on the wall. You have 4 other people who were trained with you. There's also the help, and then you can ping me. So again, I believe in trying to help yourself out of your hole. That will pay itself off. I'm happy to help if you're sitting in front of a customer or, time is critical. Yeah, don't hesitate to give me a jingle. I'll help you. Because I understand. I've been there. That's why you always see me be very responsive to people, because
Well,
I've
and
been
I think
there.
I think we're in a position right now
Yep.
where we're not going to have anything that's like super pressing for a customer. We're just kind of doing this like, hey, because I talked to the plant manager at the power plant, and I said, hey, and I told her a little bit about the Michigan State thing, like, as part of this engagement we're going to do with you, we're going to do some multivariate analysis. If we find something, we can work out a deal, right? If we find something that's going to save you, save you something, then we can, work something out. And I think there's something each of us is working on where we could probably do that. I mean, Albemarle obviously pays us, on a regular basis, and they've asked us to do some of it. So, that's good. But, some of them, I think, we can just offer it like, hey, we've been looking at this, here's what we see. And, maybe it sparks interest or sparks other services for us. So, or sparks more revenue too, because they're like, hey, you just saved us, $100,000. So who knows?
Yeah. The goal, as you guys have already learned with multivariate, is to get people to believe that it actually works. And then once you get over that hurdle, then the floodgates kind of open up. So as long as you're able to position it correctly, hey, we use this tool to help us analyze what's going on, and here's what we found. We had an upset here, 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 and here. Looks like it's related to feed water flow or whatever. Then they go, oh yeah, we're aware of that. Okay, and we found this over here. Okay, great. So in other words, we can see the normal variations you see in your process, or sensitive to those, etc. What was really upsetting you, or what really looked odd was this, right? If you really did find something weird, or you go back and go, hey, I don't tell them you didn't see nothing. What was concerning you, and then go, have that conversation. So the whole thing about data is to have the data tell the story. And I've heard you say that. I didn't borrow it from you. We've been saying the same things for years. The data has a story in it. You just got to figure out what the story is and you got to tell it. If you don't tell the story, nobody's going to listen or pay attention to you. So you got to tell the story of the data, then people will buy in and want to work with you. If you don't tell the story of the data, oh, there, I found this in the data. That's a dry as bleep, report that nobody's going to pay attention to. So you got to tell the story with your data. You do that, you'll do fine. But you got the biggest key here again is the buy-in. Get them to agree to simple stuff. Oh, I see you had some downtimes here, 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 and here. Show them the graph. Oh, yeah, okay. So we removed those. And then we then noticed that you had a trend that was related to seasonality. So we backed that out. Okay. So now you're building confidence that you can see things in the data. And then you show the intermediate steps as you move along. And then you get to the final point of, okay, we're going to need a little bit of help from you, more data, or maybe an expert for an hour or two to go through the data with one of our people. And then you've moved that relationship along, and you've spent some good amount of time, which you're billing for, talking to them and building that relationship and making sure they're comfortable with you and their data. And once you have that, it's done. Then you're in. So you're always selling, right? Always be closing. So always be thinking about how you can move this along. Unfortunately, that's how it works in this world. Nobody gets paid for doing nothing, right? You got to bring value somewhere along the way. So always be closing. How can I bring value to my client? How can I help with his data? How can I tell the story of the data to bring him value? You do all that and this is going to work for you. I know you're already doing that, so this will work for you. This will be a phenomenal tool. Just make sure you document your story and you know what you're going to tell, and you'll be fine.
It's interesting that you said all of that because we just had a talk about sales and how we're all in sales just last week. So
I'm in sales.
Yep.
I'm in sales.
Yep, we're all in sales. Always.
Yeah. I have to sell myself every day,
Exactly.
right? So I'm always in sales.
Exactly. Okay. Well, thanks again, sir. And guys, we'll talk later. All right.
Yep.
See ya.
Good.
All right.
All right.
Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Art.
Have fun.
Bye.
Bye now.